The sound of glass shattering echoed through the marble halls of the mansion, followed by a gasp so sharp it felt like it could cut the air itself. A woman, delicate and heavily pregnant, bent down to gather the shards with trembling hands, while her husband's mistress looked down on her with a smug smile, sipping from a crystal flute of champagne. The billionaire stood nearby, silent but complicit, his cold gaze piercing through the one woman who should have been safest in his arms. Instead, she was treated like a servant, humiliated beyond measure, ordered to serve the very woman who had stolen her marriage. And in that moment of despair, when her body ached and her heart shattered, she didn't know that fate was already weaving a different path, one that would bring her twin sister, a powerful CEO, back into her life to deliver the justice she deserved. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the strength of women who refuse to stay broken, make sure you like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to our channel, Stories Collection. Your support helps us bring more powerful, heart-touching stories to life. The story of Alina began long before this night of humiliation. She had been a girl of dreams and quiet strength, a woman who believed love could conquer even the coldest of winters. When she married Adrian Blackwood, one of the richest men in the city, she thought her life had unfolded like a fairy tale. Their wedding was lavish, filled with roses, chandeliers, and promises whispered against silk veils. She thought she was marrying a man who saw her heart, not just her beauty. For a while, she was right. He showered her with affection, laughter, and a tenderness that made her believe forever could be real. But wealth has a way of feeding darkness, and power can twist the soul. The man she had loved slowly disappeared behind ambition, greed, and eventually, betrayal. The betrayal didn't come quietly. Adrian didn't simply fall into temptation, he flaunted it. He brought Isabella, his mistress, into their home, parading her as though she were some prize he deserved. What burned the most wasn't that he cheated, but that he dared to humiliate Alina further by making her serve the other woman. Alina, carrying the child of the man who now treated her like dust beneath his shoes, found herself torn between her dignity and survival. Her heart whispered that she should run, but her body was heavy with life, and she had nowhere to go. Every night, she lay in the vast emptiness of her room, hands resting on her swollen belly, whispering promises to the child within. You will know love, even if I must bleed to give it to you. What Adrian didn't know, however, was that Alina had someone out there, someone who carried her same face but lived an entirely different life. Her twin sister, Celeste. The world knew Celeste as a ruthless yet brilliant CEO, a woman who had clawed her way into the business world with steel determination. Where Alina was soft, Celeste was sharp. Where Alina gave her heart, Celeste guarded hers behind iron walls. Years before, a rift had torn the sisters apart. Misunderstandings, harsh words, and distance had turned them into strangers. But blood, as destiny always reminds us, is not so easily severed. The moment Celeste received word of Alina's suffering, whispered by an old family friend who could no longer watch in silence, something inside her ignited. She had built empires, outsmarted tycoons, and risen to heights no one believed she could reach. But nothing stirred her soul like the knowledge that her sister was being trampled under the heel of a man who should have protected her. Celeste vowed, silently and fiercely, that no one, not even the mighty Adrian Blackwood, would get away with destroying her sister's spirit. Meanwhile, Alina's days grew darker. Adrian continued to force her into degrading situations, each more cruel than the last. He would dine with Isabella at the long mahogany table, laughing as Alina poured their wine, his eyes daring her to protest. Isabella would mock her gently, with words dipped in venom disguised as honey, tracing her manicured fingers over Adrian's arm while Alina stood by, heart splintering with each passing second. And yet, even in her silence, Elena's spirit began to weave a quiet kind of resistance. She realized that though Adrian could force her body to obey, he could not control her heart. That heart beat only for her unborn child and for a faint hope that one day she would rise again. The turning point came one stormy evening when Celeste appeared unannounced at the mansion's gates. Dressed in black, her presence was like thunder rolling through the night. The guards, unsure whether to let her in, froze when her voice, calm yet commanding, cut through the rain. "Tell Adrian Blackwood that Celeste Knight is here." When Elena saw her sister step into the grand hall, her swollen body nearly collapsed with relief. For a heartbeat, she thought it was a dream. The two women locked eyes, mirrors of each other, yet worlds apart in spirit. Celeste's gaze softened when she saw Elena's fragile state, the swelling of her belly, the shadows beneath her eyes. Without a word, she embraced her twin, and for the first time in years, Elena allowed herself to sob into the safety of someone who truly loved her. Adrian, however, was less welcoming. He mocked Celeste, tried to belittle her, called her an intruder. But he underestimated her entirely. Celeste wasn't just any woman. She was power in its purest form, and she had come armed not with weapons, but with influence, strategy, and unshakable will. She moved swiftly, gathering evidence of Adrian's corruption, his hidden debts, his shady business dealings. She exposed him piece by piece, until his empire trembled beneath her hand. Every document she unveiled, every board member she won over, was a strike of vengeance for her sister's suffering. Through it all, Elena found strength she never knew she had. Celeste's arrival reminded her of the fire that once lived inside her, and with each passing day, she began to stand taller. No longer did she bow her head when Isabella sneered. No longer did she flinch when Adrian's voice cut sharp. She realized that even if she had been treated like a servant, she was, in truth, a queen. One whose crown could never be taken from her, because it was forged of love, endurance, and sacrifice. The final blow came during a shareholders' meeting where Adrian expected to flaunt his control. Instead, Celeste walked in, arm linked with Elena, her presence radiating both beauty and authority. Before the stunned board, Celeste revealed the truth of Adrian's cruelty, his infidelity, and his mismanagement. Evidence projected onto the screens left no room for denial. The same men and women who once bowed to Adrian now turned on him, stripping him of power, removing him from his throne. Isabella vanished like a shadow, unwilling to stand beside a fallen king. And there, in the silence that followed his downfall, Elena finally breathed again. But Celeste wasn't finished. She handed the pen to her sister, guiding Elena's trembling hand. As she signed the documents that transferred control of several key assets into her name. Adrian had stolen her dignity, but with her twin beside her, Elena reclaimed not just her place in the world, but her belief in herself. She wasn't a broken woman anymore. She was a mother, a survivor, and a woman reborn. When Elena finally gave birth, her sister was by her side, holding her hand as life cried out for the first time. The baby's wails filled the room, a song of new beginnings. Elena wept, not from sorrow, but from the overwhelming beauty of knowing that despite everything, love had won. And Celeste, who had once built her empire on walls of steel, allowed herself to cry too, knowing that family was her greatest victory. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you of the power of love, loyalty, and standing up for those who cannot fight for themselves, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to Stories Collection. Leave a comment below to let us know how it made you feel. Your words mean more than you know, and help us continue to create stories that inspire. Special request. Comment below. Love always wins. if you believe no cruelty can destroy the strength of a woman's heart. Elena's life in the mansion became a theater of cruelty. Each day blurred into the next as she was forced into a role no wife should ever play. She had once moved through those gleaming marble halls as the lady of the house, the heart of the family. But now she walked them with downcast eyes, carrying trays, cleaning spills, and silently enduring laughter directed at her pain. Adrian didn't shout or strike. His weapon was indifference, the coldness of a man who no longer saw her as human. And Isabella, beautiful and venomous, relished in reminding Elena of her fall. The mistress would deliberately drop her napkin, smirk as Elena bent down with her swollen belly to pick it up, and then whisper mockingly, "Careful, wouldn't want to hurt the baby." Elena's body ached, her soul withered, but somewhere deep within, the faint flame of defiance refused to die. At night, when she lay awake with tears dampening her pillow, she pressed her hand against her belly and whispered to her child. She told them stories of a better world, where kindness reigned over cruelty, where love was gentle, and where dignity was not a gift granted by men, but a crown carried by birthright. Those whispers became her lifeline, keeping her sane in a house designed to break her. What Adrian never understood was that even broken wings remember how to fly. The day Celeste arrived, Elena's world shifted. She had not seen her twin in years. Their falling out had been painful, driven by pride, misunderstandings, and the paths they had chosen in life. Elena had chased love, Celeste had chased power. For too long, they had lived in different worlds, each convinced they no longer needed the other. But when Elena's eyes fell upon Celeste in the mansion's doorway, dressed in storm, black with eyes blazing, all that history dissolved. Blood remembered blood, pain remembered love, and Elena, for the first time in months, felt hope surge inside her. Celeste was fire where Elena had been forced into ashes. She didn't tiptoe, she didn't plead. She demanded answers. The walls that Adrian had built around his empire trembled as she moved with precision, contacting journalists, unearthing his hidden accounts, even tracking down employees he had exploited. She turned his arrogance against him, using the very secrets he thought were buried to dismantle him piece by piece. Adrian tried to fight back. He threatened lawsuits, shouted, even begged when he realized his power was slipping. But Celeste was unmoved. She had not built her empire by bowing to men like him. Every signature, every contract, every shareholder she swayed was fueled by the image of her sister serving drinks to a mistress while carrying his child. And Elena, she began to rise too. She followed her sister into meetings, at first quietly, then with growing courage. The men who had once dismissed her as merely Adrian's wife were forced to listen as she spoke, her voice trembling but filled with truth. She revealed the nights she had been humiliated, the coldness of being treated as invisible in her own home, the strength it took to endure for the sake of her unborn child. Her vulnerability became her weapon, moving even the most hardened hearts in the boardroom. For the first time, Elena wasn't silent. She was heard. The night before Adrian's final downfall, Elena sat with Celeste on the balcony of the mansion, the city lights flickering like distant stars. They shared stories they had buried, childhood dreams, regrets, and the ache of years lost to pride. Celeste reached for her sister's hand, her voice breaking as she said, "I should have been here sooner." Elena shook her head, tears in her eyes, and replied, "You came exactly when I needed you most." In that moment, the sisters found each other again, not just as family, but as two halves of the same unbreakable spirit. When Adrian's empire finally crumbled, it was not with an explosion, but with a silence heavier than any thunder. Isabella disappeared, unwilling to stand beside a man stripped of wealth. The shareholders abandoned him. The press shredded his reputation. and the mansion that had once echoed with his power now felt like an empty shell. Adrian stood alone, staring at the ruins of what he had built, while Elena, no longer the broken woman who had served at his table, stood with her sister, her hand resting protectively on her belly, her eyes steady and unafraid. And then came the rebirth. Elena gave birth to a daughter on a sunlit morning, her cries ringing with strength. Celeste held the baby first, whispering promises of protection, of a future where no one would ever make her mother feel small again. Elena watched with tears streaming down her face, realizing that the child had been born not into despair, but into a family stronger than steel. She had lost a husband, but she had gained back her sister, her dignity, and a new beginning. The story didn't end with revenge. It ended with healing. Celeste used her power to ensure Elena would never struggle again. But Elena herself chose to rebuild, not as someone's wife, but as her own woman, her own foundation, her own strength. And though the scars of betrayal would never fully vanish, they became reminders of battles survived, of resilience proven, of love restored between two sisters. Because in the end, the mansion no longer belonged to Adrian or Isabella. It belonged to Elena, to her child, and to the bond of sisterhood that had risen from the ashes to burn brighter than ever before. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, share it with someone who needs courage, and subscribe to Stories Collection. Your support gives life to stories of resilience, love, and redemption. Special request, comment below. Love always wins. If you believe no cruelty can ever defeat the strength of a woman's heart.